Welcome to Asia Outlook. I'm Melody and I'm here to report the top stories from around Asia. Thursday marks the first time since February 28 that the Chinese mainland reported zero imported cases. Health officials said the number of current infections has dropped to 260, the lowest since January 20th. As of Thursday, total cases on the Chinese mainland are over 82,000. The death toll stands at over 4,000. Meanwhile, China says it will continue to support the World Health Organization's global initiative of developing a vaccine against COVID-19. At least 12 people died from a chemical gas leak at an industrial plant in India on Thursday. The incident happened in the southeastern state of Andhra Pradesh early in the morning, while people were sleeping. Hundreds of others are now being treated in different hospitals. Officials fear many more may be unconscious in their homes. Footage on Indian television channels shows people, including women and children, lying on the streets. May 4th is known as Star Wars Day to many fans of the movie. Some officials in the Philippine capital Manila have been using that theme to encourage people to recognize lockdown rules. In special Star Wars outfits, they have been visiting different districts, distributing relief packs, and reminding residents to follow government guidelines. They say their costumes have made people smile amid the stress of the lockdown. While the Philippines reported nearly 10,000 cases, its death toll stands at 690. The last supermoon of 2020 rose in the night sky on Thursday over a world beginning to re-emerge after weeks of coronavirus-related lockdowns. Take a look. At least 15 people were killed after train crushed homebound migrant workers sleeping on tracks in India's southwestern state of Maharashtra. Officials say the victims are migrant laborers who were thought to be traveling to their home villages. Under the country's coronavirus lockdown, all public transport has been suspended, forcing jobless migrants to walk long distances home. Officials believe the workers were sleeping on the railway tracks when the tragedy occurred. Local media reports that one survivor has been admitted to hospital with injuries. Stay with us as we bring you more news on Asia Outlook. According to a recent article by the New York Times, Twitch, the leading site for streaming video games, has seen its average daily traffic shoot up by 20% since the pandemic began. Video game sales have also been skyrocketing. The newest installment of Nintendo's Animal Crossing series, called New Horizon, has broken records, selling more than 5 million copies since its release in late March. It's now the fastest-selling digital console game of all time. CGTN Grace Lee has more details from Tokyo.
Ramses might want to still do damage. Ramses snatches it, and it's a big three-man ulti onto him.
I guess for people who are not familiar, it's easier to describe as just basically a sport of teams with 5 players against 5 players.
Andreas Nielsen, known professionally as Crit, is a pro gamer.
Pretty good play.
He's a support player for his team Evil Geniuses, and the online game Dota 2 is their playing field.
We also have a coach, like most sports have a coach, and then we compete against other teams. So in that way, it's very much like traditional sports. The difference obviously being that we have keyboards and mice.
With the coronavirus pandemic keeping people at home,
are comforting. They're a space of escape, distraction, like a lot of other entertainment media. They're a place where we can kind of turn off the rest of the world a little bit.
According to Lane Nooney, an assistant professor at NYU, gaming can be used as a coping mechanism, but it also offers some almost therapeutic benefits.
I think that one of the things games give us is a way of being together without having to talk about what's imminently going on. We all know why we're in these spaces, or in these spaces more than we have. We know why we're picking up our Switch or our Xbox controller more than we have before. But games give us a place to feel playful again, to feel a little padded against the outside world.
According to analyst estimates, video games have seen a 40 to 60% surge in sales worldwide since the pandemic began. Now, some games have been doing better than others, though. For example, this game, Animal Crossing's New Horizons, sold more than 5 million copies since it was debuted in late March. It's now the fastest-selling console game of all time. However, disruptions have been inevitable, even in the gaming world. For Crit, it's meant major esports events have been cancelled, and future competitions will likely be held online instead of in person.
At some point, people will realize that it just has to be this way for a while, and we have to make the best of it. It's obviously not ideal to play online, but we have to be happy that we can at least compete in some way.
Save for an absence of gawping crowds, life for the penguins of Hong Kong's Ocean Park has been much the same during the coronavirus pandemic. But their carers have worked long shifts to keep the monochrome troop healthy. Piles of fresh snow have been laid out as some 100 penguins excitedly gather for the mid-morning feeding session. Usually, this daily ritual at the South Pole Spectacular would be a major draw, but now the park is still shut because of the coronavirus outbreak. Let's take a look.
So in the usual day, we may have 5 to 6 caretakers to take care of the 100 penguins, and now maybe we've got only 3 to 4 per day. But we still need to make sure every penguin is still living healthily and healthily, both physical and mentally. You see, playing with them and training and feeding.
Like many countries, Thailand is expected to report a sudden jump in unemployment numbers due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But the nickname Teflon Thailand, which it earned after brushing off political and economic hardship in the past, may not apply on this occasion, as a quarter of the Thai workforce could lose their jobs. CGTN's Tony Chang reports from Bangkok, where harsh economic realities are starting to bite.
Drive-through, Bangkok style. But this is a food relief scheme for low-income workers. Buses pull up outside a temple as food parcels are passed to those inside. Inside the temple gates, volunteers prepare more parcels to hand out. As unemployment numbers start to rise, large numbers of Thais just can't make ends meet.
When the temple started giving out food, I came to get it because I sell stuff, but I can't make any sales.
Suaporn hasn't lost her job just yet. The cosmetic surgery where she works has been shuttered for a month, and she's on 50% of her wage. But the commission that made up most of her income is gone. Now she spends her days playing with her daughter in their rented home. But as a single mother with bills to pay and a sizable credit card debt, it's hard not to worry about the future.
It's very difficult to survive on the money I got now. 6,000 baht is not enough. I also have to pay the credit card debt that the bank doesn't help on the interest.
Unemployment numbers in Thailand are usually low. Many low-income workers move quickly between industries or simply return to the countryside when times are hard. But the tourism and services sectors have ground to a halt, and that may well lead to a quarter of the Thai workforce losing their jobs. How high do you think the unemployment numbers will be here?
I think the number is around 7 million people. We get be unemployed. But if this situation lasts longer, 3 more months, the number might go up to 10 million.
Over the past 2 decades, Thailand's bounced back from civil unrest and global economic gloom. But the coronavirus may well prove harder to shake off. Thailand's luxury shopping malls say they want to reopen on the 1st of May. But with so much uncertainty here, it's unlikely that the shoppers are going to come flooding back. And with the world effectively shut down, in Thailand, a country so reliant on exports and tourism, people here are very unsure about when they're going to get back to work. Tony Cheng, CGTN, Bangkok.
This is a heartwarming moment. A 2-month-old baby has survived the coronavirus at a hospital in the Philippines. A new study conducted by Chinese scientists suggests that the origin of COVID-19 could be traced back to both pangolins and bats. Experts say the new virus could have been created as a result of the regrouping of coronaviruses in these 2 animals. The research was jointly carried out by scientists from the South China Agricultural University and Guangzhou Zoo, who warned that if the wildlife trade isn't managed properly, the coronavirus existing in mammals will pose greater threats to human health in the near future. Practicing good hand hygiene is one of the best ways to protect ourselves during the COVID-19 pandemic. But the frequent use of heavy soaps and hand sanitizers is leading to an increase in painful skin conditions. Dr. Lee Chuan Wong from Sydney Skin tells us more about this rising issue.
Every time we go outside, we should be washing our hands. We touch door handles, opening doors or touching benches, we must be washing our hands. So the frequency of hand washing is exponential compared to prior to this pandemic. My patients are coming in with very dry skin, very sensitive and showing signs of redness, fissuring, so splits in the tips of their fingers, weeping, and sometimes as bad as a secondary skin infection because of the openings in the skin. some patients, particularly those who are very anxious, that might have lost their job, money worries, they're scratching because that's their point of skin contact, of taking it out on their skin, and some aren't even sleeping at night because it's just that bad in terms of pain and itch. Try to avoid fragranced products because that will definitely irritate sensitive skin. And then the key is after hand washing to always moisturize. And we must moisturize as well without fragrance.
India has relaxed its lockdown even as cases of COVID-19 passed 50,000. The central government started trains to take migrant workers back to their homes. But the country continues to struggle to balance health implications of coronavirus and its impact on the economy.
The Indian government started its national lockdown on 25th of March, which was to end on 3rd of May. The Indian government has now extended it to 17th of May. But depending on which part of country has how many coronavirus cases, various districts have been put into zones: green, red and orange. Cities like Delhi are in the red zone, and the lockdown will continue even as some relaxations are given. These relaxations includes allowing taxis but with limited number of people inside, few offices with a limited number of employees. Meanwhile, buses will also be started but with seating capacity kept to half. The Indian government has decided to open alcohol shops in this next phase of the national facing a financial crunch. Small vegetable vendors like these are following their own social distancing rules. For instance, here you can see there is a circle drawn, and then this particular vegetable vendor has also kept a sanitizer to make sure that people who come here first clean their hands before buying vegetables.
If you do not come out, then you are totally safe, but sometimes like me who are staying alone and 81, we have to take special precaution to combat with this, and we'll overcome.
We are a little confused, but only it's a virus, and which is very deadly and new, and there are a lot of people, there's a human life are suffered due to this, and God knows how long it will continue.
The supermarkets have become really the center of activity in India as well, like other places. It has come down to basics, people looking for food, basic necessities. Really, it's the whole coronavirus lockdown here, even here in India, has been about getting back to basics.
These are, of course, different times and difficult times. In the sense, not from the security of your own people who are working with you or for yourself also, but also from the from the supplying side also. It's very difficult to mobilize the resources and the supply both. So it has been a very different and difficult sort of experience.
And then there are containment zones like these in New Delhi, which still have cases. The new rules don't apply to these areas, which means that extra shops, even smaller shops within these zones, cannot open, and people cannot come outside or go inside. India's poor has been the hardest hit because of the coronavirus lockdown. The biggest challenge of the Indian government remains to provide them with food and other basic necessities.
काफ़ी चेंजिंग हो गया, लोग वहाँ डर भी गए हैं, कुछ फूड मंगाते भी नहीं हैं, काफ़ी बदलाव है। और जहाँ तक रास्ते वगैरह बंद होते हैं, हर चीज़ का पालन करना पड़ता है। ट्रेनिंग मिली है चीज़ के बारे में कि आप जितने सोशल डिस्टेंस बनाइए, ग्रुप में मत रहिए और ग्लव्स वगैरह पहनिए।
With the economy coming to a complete standstill, India's poor and migrants are finding it tough to fend for themselves. The Indian government has started trains to take them back to their villages and homes. Meanwhile, large cities like Indian capital Delhi and India's financial capital Mumbai continues to see rise in coronavirus cases, which means the lockdown with some relaxations will continue in large cities. The Indian government's struggle remains whether to handle the health implications of coronavirus or its financial implication on its economy. Shweta Bajaj, CGTN, New Delhi, India.
There are more news coming on Asia Outlook, so make sure you stick around. While COVID-19 infection rates in Africa have been lower than the rest of the world due to factors like hotter weather and less travel, the continent also suffers from a lack of testing capacity. To that, international collaboration may help both during and after the pandemic. Let's take a look.
What do African pharmaceutical logistics startup mPharma, a Silicon Valley investor, and a Chinese biotech have in common? They're all working to beef up COVID-19 testing in Africa. Greg Roxon founded mPharma to make drugs more affordable and available to patients in Africa.
We saw as countries in Europe and the US struggled to put in place a robust testing system. So by collaborating with Breyer Capital and Sunshare, we were able to quickly tap into the experience that China had built in putting in place a robust testing system and get the equipment, PCR equipment and test kits that we could provide to many African countries. And through this collaboration, we've been able to support about half a dozen countries through providing them with the equipment, test kits, and training through Sunshare. That has allowed them to be able to improve their testing capacity.
So far, mPharma has bought 400,000 testing kits and reagents from China's Sansure. The pandemic has meant training people how to use the testing kits, usually done face-to-face, is now online.
We made a lot of videos so to show people how to use our assay step by step, and of course we have lots of SOPs so people can easily follow. For each country we have a group of scientists work around the clock to help them.
Jim Breyer, one of the earliest investors in Facebook, has seen the potential in such collaborations.
Here in the heart of Silicon Valley, it's a pleasure to talk to you a little bit about why Breyer Capital and Breyer Labs find China-US relationships so profound when it comes to parts of the world like Africa, where the Chinese technologies and the US AI technologies can really be applied to make a very big difference, whether it's COVID-19, whether it's future opportunities around testing and making a big difference in healthcare in Africa and other parts of the world. It's the cooperation that will lead to the very best healthcare outcomes and best results for patients.
The partnership will extend beyond COVID-19. By the end of this pandemic, mPharma plans to have a network of medical laboratories to perform diagnostics on different diseases in multiple African countries.
We believe that by being able to upgrade and provide high quality equipment to the labs that we are collaborating with, even beyond COVID-19, we will be able to provide additional molecular tests that these labs can now be able to offer to people. We expect to see this collaboration expand to countries beyond Ghana, Nigeria, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Gabon, and others. So it has been a very great experience being able to leverage on the lessons that China learned and use those lessons and the infrastructure that we've been able to build together with Sunshare and Breyer Capital to advance in the area of testing.
When so much is being politicized and countries turn inward amid the pandemic, the combination of mPharma's health logistics business model, Briar Capital's experience in financing, with Chinese technology and training, is a symbol of what works and hopefully heralds more collaborations to come. Chen Lei, CGTN.
Disposable face masks should be used once and then thrown in the trash. Lucy Gao from Beijing United Family Hospital shows us how to properly take off a mask.
Now I'm going to demonstrate how to take off the mask properly.
The 2020 AEW China Fashion Week is in full swing in downtown Beijing. Due to the COVID-19 outbreak, the week-long event is introducing the newest collections through online streaming. This has both challenged and inspired the designers from home and abroad. CGTN Shen Li has more.
A special runway show where everyone gets a front row seat. These simple and elegant designs are the pride and joy of Chen Wenhan from central China's Hubei province, the show designers. Chen still recalls her surprise when she heard about getting second place at the event. She and her team only had less than a month to prepare for the big moment.
At first, we thought the fashion show would be simple with no audience. But later we realized that we couldn't be there either. It was a real challenge for me, especially on how to ensure the integrity of my design. And I tried each set of clothes myself, took photos and detailed all of the necessary information on printed documents, including the movements of models on stage.
The collection was named Sheng, a Chinese pun for both reflection and economize. Chen joked that due to the ongoing pandemic, the fashion show has dialed down its glamour and resorted to online streaming for a lower budget. But at the same time, the process of preparing it also offers an opportune moment for self-reflection.
This is the very first fashion show of our brand. So I think the primary job is to introduce the style to the public and tell them who we are. We prefer using natural fabrics. For example, Xiangyusha is our plants and minerals. And I believe with subtle efforts by our designers, this fabric can enter a more global market.
Apart from incorporating traditional crafts and material in the fashion world, she's keen to explore the essence of Oriental aesthetics and add a modern touch to it.
I think the current Chinese designers should settle down a bit and go deeper into the cultural roots.
In addition to its online showcase, Chen's brand is also taking part in Fashion Week's online See Now, Buy Now selling sessions. This edition of China Fashion Week has brought together over 170 designer brands from China and over 60 international
South Korean football and women's golf are expected to resume soon, as only 3 cases reported on Tuesday. Although professional sports slowly begin to restart, there are still many restrictions among them. Like fans are banned from stadiums and players are asked not to shake hands or high-five. CGTN Jack Barton has more.
We've entered a phase today the government is calling everyday life quarantine, which means things have fundamentally gone back to normal, but people are still encouraged to wash their hands regularly, to wear masks, to keep some social distance, and just use send coming into the airport that are picked up through the intense screening there. So already we've seen measures being eased. Yesterday, baseball finally began. It was supposed to happen on March the 28th, but it was delayed, of course, and what we saw is 5 stadiums hosting games, but no spectators. Normally, it is a very raucous atmosphere. I'm not a big baseball fan myself, but I do go down because there's a lot of just good atmosphere, food and drink and chanting and cheerleaders, and it's a great party. Everyone goes. So we've got baseball this year, but without any of that. Instead, they had banners around the chairs with photographs of people wearing masks. 10 other countries picking up the rights to broadcast the Korean Games. There is such a hunger for sporting events and for, sporting coverage everywhere around the world at the moment that expected. So we've got baseballs already underway, but football also due to kick off on Friday. That is the Korean League, and next week professional women's golfers here in Korea expected to be the first to tee off anywhere in the world since the pandemic began.
Malaysia has eased nationwide restrictions on business activities and movement, but some of its states have refused to comply, pointing to a rise in infections over the weekend as a sign that it was way too soon to lift curbs.
Traffic in Kuala Lumpur has picked up. Shops have started reopening, but many remain shuttered. People are sparse on public transport and in popular shopping areas and malls. Even many small business owners think the restrictions may have been lifted too swiftly.
Of course I'm worried that I open. No choice. But at least now you open a little bit, you sell a little bit, at least you get cash coming in. You can pay certain things like the wages, the rental.
The government says continuing the partial lockdown till June would have cost Malaysia about 10% of its GDP. And it is spending billions to try to sustain the economy while seeing its revenues shrivel. As a federal territory, Kuala Lumpur is following the central government's instructions, allowing shops to reopen and restaurants to serve dine-in customers as long as they follow strict procedures. Judging from the online reaction, most Malaysians believe the government should have waited longer or opened up more gradually.
We are not happy with this announcement what our PM did. If we can act week or 2 weeks more.
I'm still worried, no doubt, but we have guidelines to prevent infection. I go home, I shower and change right away before I see the kids. We have to look after ourselves.
I do agree with them. Actually, we should have waited 1 more week.
Asians to follow the guidelines on hygiene and social distancing to make sure the sacrifices of the past 7 weeks don't go to waste. And social distancing.
Charities are helping out Thai elephant camps, which are struggling from the economic fallout of the coronavirus pandemic. And that's all we have for today's Asia Outlook on MI Radio. Thank you for being with us. We'll be back next week. Until next time.